Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. This is episode 360 and for this episode I've decided to revisit the 360 degree tour type of video that we did for episode 300. Now that I've learned a little bit more about the format and I know that I need to export in a slightly higher resolution to get better quality. So, if you want to enjoy this video to its fullest, I recommend watching on a mobile device or a VR headset if you have one. And I'm taking into account that VR headset users might get a little bit nauseous if I'm moving the camera around a lot, so for the majority of this tour, which is going to be for the Survival Guide Museum as it currently exists, it's still kind of a work in progress, but this is going to be a stationary stop tour, so we're going to basically warp to different points where the camera is going to be completely still and allow you to look around. You can still enjoy these videos on the browser if you decide to use the WASD keys or the arrow keys on screen. I believe you can use either of those to look around the screen and take a look at what's going on here. Now you'll have to excuse me, I need to hop inside and sleep for the night, and then I'll probably pause the day-night cycle just for the ease of this tour. But of course, this being a survival world, I need to re-enable that just so I can carry on playing the game as I normally do. There we go, that's better, welcome back. So we have here the main entrance of the museum. This is a project that I've been working on for the last little while in the Survival Guide series, and it is probably going to be the final project of the Survival Guide world, because I intend to move on to some other projects in 1.17 and return for a Survival Guide Season 2 in 1.18. The main entrance to the museum here is a relatively new addition. It still has a couple of things that I need to finish up. You'll have to excuse the shulker boxes lying around as well. This is kind of a project that's been under construction. But if you'll follow me into the reception area, you can see what I've been working on over the last little while. Welcome to the reception hall, and this is obviously not a hall that's got any exhibits in. This is just basically the main entrance as you come into the museum, and I've been working on this for the last few days, just kind of getting it a little bit extra detailed and making sure that the space can transition from one exhibit to another. As you can see, the corridors in either direction don't really go anywhere right now. Eventually those will lead to some other exhibits, but I need to make sure I can get episodes done on those exhibits and show you exactly what I'm up to. In the meantime, though, this didn't really merit an episode. It was just a big build. I spent a lot of time kind of patching some stuff up. And honestly, I've been doing a lot of these builds in a creative world copy of the museum so that I can effectively draft what I want to build. And then I've been coming back through and rebuilding it all in survival without creative modes. So this is, yeah, obviously a little bit of work has gone on in between episodes here, and it's just been a little while getting this stuff sorted out, but I think you'll agree the level of detail that I've got here is actually really nice. It kind of feels like you're standing in the reception room of a museum, and one of the museums that's been around for a while. A lot of this stuff is kind of based on the Natural History Museum in London, which is one of my favourite museums in the world. So let's head on through to the main exhibition hall. This is kind of the central hall at the middle of the museum, where I've been doing a lot of work in here as well. Obviously, the main feature of this hall is right above us right now. This is the Ender Dragon model. I've been thinking of it more as a model than as a skeleton lately, partly because some of the proportions are a little bit weird, but I decided to do one of these in almost like a tribute to an older series in which I designed an Ender Dragon skeleton to go in a museum I was building on one of my old multiplayer servers I used to play on. And so this became the centerpiece. The main exhibit in this hall is going to be a lot of stuff about the end. So of course we have an obsidian tower over there in the corner. But I wanted to give the impression that this room was like a hall that you could effectively swap out the central exhibition of the museum at any time. And so I wanted to make the design of the rest of the hall relatively generic. So we've got a coffered ceiling up there now with a lot of light fixtures in it. We've got this main central part of the ceiling from which the Ender Dragon model can be hung, but of course we can hang basically anything else we want to from there if we imagine the exhibit changing. And of course this central area of the floor here is a basalt replica of the bedrock portal in the end, the one that you use to return to the overworld after you've fought the dragon. And I just like the fact that basalt was a close enough block to bedrock that we could approximate it without going through the enormous technical procedure required to obtain blocks of bedrock in survival. Obviously, around the outside of the room here, you have paintings. There are only 3 4x4 paintings in Minecraft, so I basically kind of had to make do by duplicating the paintings that I had up there within this space, but I think the frames came together quite well, and all in all, I'm really happy with how this space feels. I want to fill out the empty sections of the floor with a couple of things, and of course, over here on this side of the room, we have a glass case full of all of the different types of zombies that I've been able to capture so far, which will of course be transferred to the mob exhibit when we can get started on that. But in the meantime, I really like the way this hall came together, and the dirt box at the back there has another zombie in it, just in case anything happens to any of these ones over here. For now, that's going to be it for the main hall, though. Let's move around to the next exhibit, which we're going to start over here on this side of the museum with the grass and dirt exhibit. So this exhibit here is all about grass and dirt, and it's probably the most complete exhibit out of everything in the museum in terms of the design of the exhibit and everything, plus a little bit of decor on the walls as well. So I wanted to make sure each different variant of dirt, including grass path and mycelium and podzol and all of that lovely stuff, was represented here. The exhibit also has a little diorama in the center where you're currently standing, and around you there are different exhibits about dirt and grass. So you can track grass spread and mycelium spread by taking a block out of this chest and placing it in one of the gaps around here. This section here is all about farmland and hydration, and then over here we have crafting stations for coarse dirt made out of dirt and gravel, grass path over here in the corner, and I really wanted a comprehensive look at everything grass and dirt related. You'll see a balcony that leads up through the top part of this room, going from one exhibit back out to the main hall, and there isn't really anything in there yet. Like, I haven't really figured out what exactly those connect to, but hopefully we should get a chance to do a little bit more of that towards the end of the museum project when we're finally linking everything together. If you walk underneath the arches of this giant tree over here, you'll end up in the trees exhibit, and the trees exhibit is probably one of my favorites just because of the size of it and the fact that we're able to represent all of the different trees in Minecraft. It's kind of hard, unfortunately, to look at this from a 3D perspective because having put you sort of in the center of the room, you can't quite see everything there is to see in this exhibit. But if you take a look around you, you should get glimpses of each of the different tree variants, and I've tried to include an example of each of the different stages of oak trees, for example, when there are a bunch of different sizes of those. Obviously, the 2x2 examples of jungle and spruce trees are in here as well, and all the way at the back in this corner, we have a bunch of logs and stripped logs representing all of the different trunk blocks and stripped blocks that you can get in the game. Through the archways at the back here, which are still incomplete on this side, they look much better from the other side, we come out into the Biomes exhibit. And the Biomes exhibit is one of the ones I've been working on more recently. We wanted to represent every single unique biome, or at least each biome that had unique resources in it. And so down this row you have everything from plains and snow plains through rivers and frozen rivers, all the way down into the more exotic things like mesa, savanna, mushroom islands, bamboo jungles, and all of those kind of things. I really like the way all of this came together. It's actually quite difficult to design dioramas like this in such a small surface area, but I think each of them feels pretty well represented at this point. There are 4 biomes over in this direction, which actually ended up being slightly larger plots, just so I could convey a little bit more of the scale of the biomes, including the Badlands Mesa with a minecart chest in the mineshaft there. You have a mountains biome over here with a little bit of snow and water sources raining down from further up in the slopes. On the opposite side, you have the Shattered Savanna Plateau and the Frozen Ocean, and I felt like all of those just needed a little bit of extra scale so I could really give you a feel for what each of those biomes was about. Eventually, this entire exhibit will probably be indoors, but putting walls around it right now is a mammoth task, which I'm probably going to have to do on streams at some point or another. On the far side, we actually hit the boundary of where the museum has been up to this point, and you take a look at the generated structures exhibit. So right here we have a desert temple and a desert well, a jungle temple, and a pillager outpost. There is obviously scope for more structures to be included out here, and I'm thinking of adding in an igloo somewhere nearby, potentially an end city, although we might make that a separate exhibit in and of itself, and a witch hut will probably turn up here and there. There will be a few generated structures that always look the same, and those are the ones that I'm interested in rebuilding, unlike things like ocean ruins, which appear in various states of decay around the world, and so you'll often find that they look very different, and it's hard to represent them out here with any kind of typical design. The ones I'm really not sure about are the Pillager Outpost's kind of larger and older cousin, the Woodland Mansion. That I'm still thinking about maybe making just individual rooms of a Woodland Mansion, but given that we are a little bit tight for time potentially with the next update coming out, we might end up foregoing it entirely and maybe just redesigning a room of the mob exhibit about pillagers so that it looks a little bit like the interior of a Woodland Mansion or something like that. But we'll figure out a way of having it represented one way or another, and the ocean monument is an exception as well, because we actually have an ocean monument just offshore here. You might have caught a glimpse of it while we were back here in the main hall as well, but if you look downwards through the glass floor, you can actually see the stronghold end portal down there, and there is an entire stronghold buried under the location of the museum, so I'm planning on maybe digging that out a little bit to convey some of the scale of the rooms, but that's one more thing that we don't need to reproduce because it's effectively here already. Likewise, there is an abandoned mine shaft in the area too. But anyway, let's continue the tour with the flowers exhibit. This is actually kind of flowers and other plants. We've got ferns and grass represented in here as well, but each of the flowers has a sign next to it saying what the flower is and the biome in which you can find it, and this is all represented in a cave because I figured it was probably better to let the flowers themselves stand out instead of having them in a pastoral scene where you could get very easily confused if the entire room was grass. So I like the idea of growing these in caves, and it's one of those fun things that Minecraft occasionally does where you'll find a lily or a rose bush just in a cave for no apparent reason. On this side of the room you also have the saplings represented over here, and I think it's frankly a miracle that we've made the ceiling the right sort of height that none of these have grown whilst they've been here, because they will grow given adequate light. We've got a sweet berry bush patch here as well, and this section of the room does actually lead up towards another area which doesn't have anything built in it quite yet, and that's what leads out to the balcony in the dirt and grass exhibit. Let's move on into the next room though, because I figured once the natural parts of the world like plants and grass were taken care of, we ought to talk about natural stone. And so this room, while it's fairly plain right now, is an example of all of the different types of natural stone and gravel that you will find out there in the Minecraft world, represented here in these pallet formations with the campfires kind of acting like they are lifting each of these off the floor. From this room, you can go in two separate directions. Going down the corridor with the red carpet will actually lead you to the stone crafting exhibit, which we might as well take a quick detour into now. These rooms are all set up to look like giant crafting tables, as though you're standing inside of the box of a crafting table, and in each of these rooms, I've laid out all of the stone crafting recipes. So basically anything that you can craft with stone or a stone variant, like maybe cobblestone or mossy cobblestone. Smooth stone is in here as well. Basically anything you can craft with any of those blocks is now represented here. And that includes redstone components and villager workstations and all sorts of other stuff. I think there might still be one or two things I am missing, but the armor stand I think was the last one I had to add in, and we've even got a lodestone in here, which is possibly one of the more expensive blocks in the museum right now. Going back to the stone exhibit briefly and walking the other way through this larger entrance, you end up getting into the Oars exhibit, and this is where I've kept all of the ores that you can find in vanilla Minecraft as of 1.16, represented on the left hand side over here as the different sizes of veins. So naturally diamond and emerald are going to occur in smaller veins than things like coal and iron, and I wanted to reflect that in how many of the blocks we had here on this side. On the opposite side over here we have a whole bunch of different resource blocks and the resources themselves in item frames with the corresponding ore blocks, so you can see exactly what each block gives you. And then over here in this corner there is a smelting workstation, which kind of hints at the fact that you can actually smelt each of the blocks of ore, and we've got a shulker box here that provides ore blocks for you to do that. But on this side here, it's the only two blocks which you should smelt out of ore blocks, like iron and gold, and that's even changing in the next update, so it's surprising how quickly exhibits like this are going to become outdated, because you'll be able to fortune those in the next update. Next up we move into the tool space, and this is kind of a large open, more like warehouse style area where the idea is that you can just run over to whichever crafting station you feel like, take out the ingredients for the crafting recipe for any of the tools that you see displayed here, and craft your own. And I really like the idea of making this feel a little bit more like a children's sort of play space in a museum where people could come and just like let their kids run around and craft little kind of, you know, wooden tools for themselves or that kind of thing. Each of the tiers of tools is represented up here with the 5 basic tools, everything from the pickaxe all the way through to the hoe. And in the next room over here is crafting some of the more advanced or unique tools that don't have different tiers of material. So each of these different workstations has resources in the chest allowing you to craft things like shears or a shield, fishing rods and bows with sticks and string, and then flint and steel and buckets over there as well, of course. This case on the wall over here has all of the different types of armor with a smithing table in there as well to hint at the fact that you need a smithing table in order to craft netherite, and I will probably end up putting a crafting station for armor somewhere around here, but at least the suits of armor are represented inside of their glass case. Each of the exhibits in this sort of central ring bordering the main hall has something to do with the basic overworld progression of Minecraft. So starting off with natural materials that you might find, going through to precious materials like ores and the tools you need to acquire them and stuff you can craft out of them at that point. And so logically speaking, the next thing was going to be enchanting. So what we've got here is an exhibit about enchanting in which we'll have a bunch of enchanted books and the corresponding categories that I've come up with for enchanted books. We've got an example set of enchanted diamond and diamond tools over here, and an enchanting station, of course, over here in this corner, with the idea that it looks like a library, but the lectern here will allow you to control how many of the bookshelves pop up around the enchantment table, anything from 0 through to 15, which would give you a level 30 enchantment, and if you've crafted a tool in the previous exhibits, you could bring it to the enchantment table and have a go at enchanting it. There's an anvil here for combining it with books, and a grindstone for removing enchantments, so the whole enchantment workflow is kind of covered, give or take, you know, trading them from villagers, which is what I think a lot of people do at this point. Naturally, once we started talking about acquiring diamond tools, that means that the Nether is not too far behind. Well, of course, there are other ways of making a Nether portal. I thought it made sense to have the Nether portal come after acquiring diamond tools, getting a diamond pickaxe, and then stepping through to the Nether. So the Nether is a bit more of a diorama. It's a natural environment recreated here in the overworld, with a couple of Nether features and a couple of compromises on Nether design. For example, this section over here where I've tried to reproduce the effect of the fog that appears further away in the Nether with red stained glass, which I think gives a pretty decent effect, although it's fairly obvious to the experienced observer that this is all just glass blocks. But as you walk around, you get to see a little bit of the Nether environment, the ores in the floor, magma blocks, and probably the occasional lava source when I feel like putting those in, and then you step through each of the Nether biomes. You might even step through a little slower through the Soul Sand Valley, or a little faster if you're wearing your Soul Speed boots. But then you come through a warped forest and a basalt delta as well, and then you get to the Nether Fortress. This Nether Fortress was built recently in the survival guide a couple of episodes back, and it has more or less every feature you can find in a Nether Fortress. It's got more or less every architectural feature anyway. I could not, unfortunately, bring a blaze spawner into it because you can't move mob spawners in vanilla survival, and I didn't want to cheat one in creative and have blazes spawning everywhere, but I think for now it's kind of fun having the soul sand block there just as a placeholder for where the spawners would be. And then everything else in here, including the loot chest, is more or less modeled off of a vanilla Nether Fortress that I found in this world. So we've taken sections of the Nether Fortress and brought them in here, and I think it's worked out pretty well. Even down to the fact that we have a sort of Nether diorama surrounding this entire thing. So while of course the walls there look very much like hand-built walls, the rest of the environment below that is pretty natural, and I think that works really, really well. While a lot of these exhibits have all of their contents ready, I do want to do a lot more work on actually creating the buildings around them, creating, ceilings for each exhibit and, adding details to everything. And I'll see what time I have over the next couple of weeks to complete some more of the feel of the museum as a building. But one last stop on the tour here at the end of one of these corridors where we have a spider jockey trapped for the eventual mob exhibit is going to be the beginnings of the mob exhibit, if you look down into this hole here, you'll find there is a zombie spawner dungeon down there. And I wanted to include dungeons and mobs in kind of the same area, so we'll be digging out an area underground to use as the mob exhibit to make sure that they don't end up burning in the sunlight and so forth. And that is how we're going to spend probably the next week or so, is just working on bits and pieces for the mob exhibit, capturing all of the mobs in future episodes, and then maybe considering making a mob switch so that we can turn off mob spawning for the rest of the world using methods that are possible in survival without using commands. And that way, a visit to the museum can be a little bit more safe, even if I haven't lit up every corner as well as I possibly could have. But I'm going to bring you back to the reception and the Great Hall here, and I think that is where I'm going to leave you for this tour. Thank you so much for watching this. I know this tour video has been just the museum, but honestly, making these videos is a little bit time intensive and resource intensive, and so I just wanted to make a neat little museum tour so you guys could get an update on the progress and see what I've been doing, and you'll be seeing a lot more of this project in the near future. So thank you so much for watching this episode 360 of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Please don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.